Hello, everybody who've signed on today to our show. We're going live on Clubhouse at the moment. And of course, if you are watching this from YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content coming up. Well, welcome to another episode of Money and Me. I'm your host, Abhirog Bhattacharya. And today we have Luke Stokes, the Managing Director of FIO Protocol, on our show. Before I start my introduction of Luke and let him take over our show today, I just want to do a quick recap over all the exciting things that have been happening in the crypto markets recently. Well, it's amazing out there at the moment. I'm sure Luke is also going to fill in and talk about what's been happening. There's El Salvador, there's Paraguay, there is host of countries who are working on their CBDCs. Meanwhile, while all of these exciting developments are occurring, BTC is hovering somewhere between 30,000 to 35,000. Not too good, but not too bad either. But the most important highlight at the moment are these incredible blockchain and NFT technologies that are being built, which can take crypto to mainstream users. And that is exactly why Luke has joined us today. He's going to share some amazing inputs about his company, FIO, and how they are making blockchain and crypto more accessible to users all over the world. Over to you, Luke. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. Yeah, there's a number of amazing, exciting things going on. Actually, just yesterday, another thing that was announced is Shapeshift as a company decided to completely decentralize and become a decentralized autonomous organization. And I find that as some really fascinating validation because the FIO protocol runs as a Cayman nonprofit and is a decentralized autonomous consortia, meaning there is no company of sorts. It's really completely decentralized, and the token holders get to have straw poll elections for who gets to be on the board, and the board essentially is on a multi-sig of the community treasury, implementing things that enable the FIO protocol to be more successful. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I've been involved in DAX and DAOs for a number of years now with EOS DAC and other projects I've worked on. So there's some exciting things to be like early on ideas like DAX and DAOs, and then to see it happening. Like, oh, it's actually happening now. I was just a couple of years too early. So yeah, very excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about the FIO protocol. Basically, we're trying to make cryptocurrency as easy to use as PayPal, Venmo, or any systems that use there in India as well, that are just human readable and humanize the whole industry. So instead of long cryptographic addresses, I can just have Luke at Stokes, and I can also do decentralized payment requests, including a memo, so I can have context about the transaction. And these are things that we think are really important for mass adoption. In the internet world, you saw, the internet was around for 10 plus years, and it wasn't until that HTTP moment, that hypertext transfer protocol moment, where you could have the World Wide Web and web browsers and an interface that people could click on and fill out forms and things of that nature. That's when the internet adoption really blew up. And we believe that's what we're providing for the crypto industry, is a human readable user experience layer for managing your cryptocurrency. And that's what the FIO protocol does. It's a really exciting moment in history to be part of.
Right. Before we move on to talk more about FIO in depth, I just wanted to ask you, Luke, tell us about your journey into blockchain. Based on what I know, you studied, computer science engineering from the University of Pennsylvania. That was more than a decade back, and then you've been circling through doing these incredible projects before venturing into blockchain. So maybe share with us that one exciting memory, or maybe 10 exciting memories that can sum up your transition to blockchain.
I always love kind of hearing people's Bitcoin, origin stories, right? They're almost like we have these, and I'm not claiming this myself, but there's all these people that I would look at as like superheroes. They're doing amazing things, building incredible tools for freedom using blockchain and crypto, and hearing their superhero origin story is always fun, right? So I wouldn't claim that myself, but I do have kind of a fun story in terms of, as you said, I majored in computer science. I was building my first websites in 1996 when I was in high school. I just really fell in love with the technology, the ability to create out of nothing, and the idea that eventually came up about building an e-commerce platform. A good friend of mine was really frustrated back in 2006, 2007 with the different e-commerce opportunities out there. Most of them were confusing. You had to have a separate website for your e-commerce and a separate website for your marketing. And so we built something called FoxyCart. It was an e-commerce shopping cart platform. And in that process, I kind of got really familiar with the whole payment industry. So I got to see how you have the acquirers and you have the merchant accounts and the payment gateways and the banks and everything kind of set up. And there's always middlemen in between taking their cut. And through that process I think it was around 2011, 2012, I heard about this fake internet money that you mine on your computer. And I was like, that's silly. That'll never take off. That's ridiculous. But it wasn't until I saw the anonymous hacker group, they put a Bitcoin address on their Twitter handle. And I'm like, well, these guys are crazy, but they're not stupid. And so there's something about this. If they're actually using this as a form of money, I need to take a second look. And so in 2013, actually in January, I spent about $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. It was my first transaction with Bitcoin. It was about $20 a Bitcoin at the time. And I just really went on the deep dive. I spent hours and hours and hours in bitcointalk.org, which was the only place you could find out about it. There were very few podcasts, very few educational content out there. And so I would just be reading through forums, trying to understand what this is. And that whole year just got more and more exciting. I did eventually get involved in the Steam blockchain, which is now the Hive blockchain. I was really excited about human readable addresses as part of Hive and how you could just do an everyday activity that you already know how to do, which is blogging, and then earn crypto that way. That was very exciting. I was able to onboard friends with that experience. And then from there, kind of got recruited to be part of the EOS launch and was part of a block producer called EOS DAC. We were community-owned block producers that was enabling people to build DACs and DAOs, decentralized autonomous communities and companies and corporations or organizations. And so we're very, very excited about decentralizing all the things that can be decentralized and should be decentralized. As part of that process, eventually moved here to Puerto Rico. And in 2018, I sold my business back to my business partner so I could focus full time, after 10 years doing e-commerce, focus full time now on crypto and blockchain. There's still a Bitcoin wiki entry for FoxyCart because back in 2013, we were trying to onboard people to cryptocurrency. Say, hey, you can actually add a BitPay or Coinbase integration to your e-commerce store. And the funny part about that back then, again, it was just a little bit too early. As I look at the law of diffusion of innovation, the kind of these exponential adoption curves of these network technologies, they always kind of cover the same path. And back then we were just way too early. It was too confusing. People didn't understand it. There wasn't enough, awareness about it. And now I see we're just at that right timing. And the next probably 4 to 5 years or so, there's some people that say we're going to reach 1 billion cryptocurrency users, which is an incredibly astounding number. Most people can't comprehend how can that happen so quickly. But when we look at like the adoption curve of the internet again, it was around about 7.5 years to get where we are now to 1 billion users. And the curve of adoption of crypto is actually much steeper. So they're estimating it's going to take even less time. And so it's just this perfect moment to be able to introduce a usability layer that makes it simple, makes it easy to understand. So it was around the end of 2018 that as I was doing consulting and advising through that year, found out about the protocol, started helping out as a part-time consultant, kind of went from there as a part-time consultant to the chief decentralization officer. And then from there, once the foundation was created by the community, they needed someone to represent the foundation as a managing director. And it's a Cayman nonprofit, as I mentioned, operates completely decentralized. Everyone who works with the foundation does so with their own worker proposal. So they're essentially their own employee of their own deliverables, their own boss of their own deliverables. It's a pretty exciting model. And it's been working out pretty well. We got about over 20 different active proposals now. And it's amazing to see the protocol continue to develop. It's been a little over a year now that we launched the protocol. And I'm just very excited about bringing tools that enable mass adoption of cryptocurrency. And that's what I think the FIO protocol does.
So you mentioned 1 billion crypto users. Like you said, that's a phenomenal number. If crypto ends up reaching that, well, there's no looking back. I mean, none of the payment infrastructure right now can do what crypto payments can. And that would be pretty big. And just like I mentioned, FIO protocol is doing its part in creating wallet addresses, human readable, friendly wallet addresses for people, which I believe at least can really lead to more mainstream adoption of crypto. But what I would like to know is, it's a pretty innovative idea because like all our listeners know, wallet addresses are very complicated. Lots of numbers, lots of digits. It's a well-versed fact. A lot of people forget their wallet addresses. They end up losing a lot of money. That keeps happening now and then. So it just makes sense that you have something more readable. For example, Joe at Smith or Luke at Stokes. But the execution part of it, Luke, tell us about how that happened. Like, was it maybe some sort of a meeting with your teammates? You were discussing about what you can do and, you just come across this brainwave? Or was it that you yourself had an encounter and maybe you lost some money or maybe lost an address and you wanted to ensure that nobody goes through the same thing? So tell us about the journey that led to the creation of your protocol.
That's a great story. And actually it's interesting in a decentralized model, the way it worked out. Pablo Mostales and David Gold were the two co-founders of the original idea. And they formed a normal company. They did a normal raise of funds led by Binance Labs. And the process was essentially to take this idea that they had together and bring it to the mainstream and decentralize it. So the original idea, and David Gold's been a VC for 10 plus years. He saw the kind of distribution of the internet, all the different companies that got investment in the internet. He saw the usability problem being solved with the internet, and he saw the crypto space, and he was kind of leading their investment funds in the company he worked with for the crypto space. And he saw this idea, and he just decided, instead of just investing this, I want to kind of go back to my operator roots and actually run it and become the CEO and build this company out. So he made that choice to do that. And as I said, I kind of came on later as a consultant, kind of helping with the project at the end of 2018. But when I saw it, I just immediately decided this is what's needed. And the 8.5 years now that I've been in crypto, most of my friends I try to onboard, they just are confused and they're stressed out. They see this long hash of characters and they're like, wait, if I get one character wrong and I send my money, it's just gone forever. Or how do I know this is actually going to my mom when I send this money? Like it doesn't have her name on it. It's confusing, you know?
Right.
So the idea that you could do a decentralized payment request and it comes directly from the person you expect to say, hey, this is the exact token code, the exact chain code. Here's a memo to explain what it's about. It just gives people so much more confidence and frankly, just joy. Like it's just fun to do, so much more fun than the stress that you get with this irreversible, immutable transaction that people are so worried about making a mistake with. So I just saw it as something that has to happen for adoption. And that's something I've always been passionate about. Since 2013, I was giving presentations about how Bitcoin is going to be more disruptive than the internet. And I just really believed and have believed for a long time that this is the future. So I kind of came on board just kind of helping bring the crypto and blockchain experience specifically with delegated proof of stake, because it is an EOS-IO based technology, heavily modified. So my experience with the Hive blockchain and the EOS blockchain was a perfect connection here. So a lot of the block producers I was able to bring in who are friends of mine, people I've worked with in the blockchain space, people I've been in the trenches with when there's a technology problem, we have to, unfreeze a chain that's having issues, So I really was able to select kind of the technically excellent people that I have a tremendous respect for in the blockchain space and bring them in to help launch the chain for the FIO protocol. So that's kind of the story of how FIO started and how I got involved. And they really went through this process. It was kind of amazing. We mentioned earlier with Shapeshift. Shapeshift, Eric Voorhees is there in Denver. He knows David Gold. So I'm actually kind of curious once the whole story comes out, like at what level did David's experience influence Eric? Because I just heard this morning that David knew about the Shapeshift transition, but it was very, very hush hush, until they could announce it. But it's just the idea that I could imagine small startups kind of starting as a DAC or a DAO, but for an established company like Shapeshift to transition their entire company to a decentralized model, very similar to what Dapix did as a startup, is just phenomenally exciting. And it validates the model that we have within the FIO protocol, where it's completely decentralized. There are no employees. I have the title of managing director just because, you need that for the Cayman law, but ultimately, I'm just one among many in the steering committee and the community. And I'm just very excited about protocols taking that approach where it's an open source protocol. Everything they've built benefits the whole community. And there's a group of committed people with their active worker proposals that are continuing to add value to that protocol, but it doesn't have the same structure that you get in a centralized business where it's like, well, it all falls on one person or one CEO is going to have to make all the decisions. We're making decisions in a group. And I think that's just super exciting and super fascinating.
So adding on to what you're talking about now, I know for a fact, Luke, that you were part of a delegation that visited El Salvador last month. Yes, El Salvador, it's all over the news. People are going crazy over it. Some believe that it's going to be the next BTC and crypto hub. Others believe that, hey, you know what, El Salvador can't pull it off. But I figured, since you visited, you spoke to the government officials there, we would just hear firsthand your own experience about, talking to them. So tell us, Luke, what was it like? What was the energy? How was the energy in the atmosphere?
It was amazing. One of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. And it's kind of funny how it started out. I just had an idea. I'm like, wait, if they're going to be doing this crypto law, what if they gave every single person in El Salvador a FIO address? Just like onboard them to kind of the new experience instead of like installing landlines or whatever, just go right to the cell phone. That was kind of my thinking, like jump right to the best experience. And so I tweeted this to the president as an idea. And I sent it to a friend of mine who works with Brock Pierce's team. And he's like, that's a brilliant idea. And he immediately started a group with Brock and some other of his advisors. And they're like, yeah, it's a great idea. And then the next thing I know, I'm in a WhatsApp group with a whole group that's like going to El Salvador. And my friend was like, I think that means pack your bags, Luke, you're going to El Salvador. And so this was like a week, a time span where it was like, I tweeted something and then the next week I'm in El Salvador. And so it was really kind of amazing. I was able to fly out there with an incredible delegation of a bunch of different companies representing all kinds of aspects of the industry, from mining to ATMs to exchanges to wallets. I mean, it was really a great group of people that had a lot of diverse perspectives on the Bitcoin industry. And when I walked in, it felt like a movie set. You know, there was this gigantic, table, this big U, and at the end is these administrators from the government. We had the secretary of the central bank. We had the people from all these different departments, and then we had our whole group, and we were kind of last minute kind of figuring out who's going to present. And so all of us were asked to kind of, hey, if you have something to say, put together some slides. So I did, not really knowing who the audience would be, what the format would be, how long I would speak, whether or not I'd speak at all. And it was just kind of amazing to be like in the WhatsApp chat going, oh, hey, you're up next, and then you go, and then you go, and like, oh, wow, I guess I'm presenting to the government. So I did. I had a short presentation just talking about Bitcoin adoption again and where it's going and how important usability is and how we would like to offer this to the people of El Salvador as a user experience layer. And so we had 2 different days of meetings. We had this big kind of bus that they provided us. So they toured us all around. And so we met at the first day was kind of what they would call the White House. The next day was at their, I think the Minister of the Finance office. And again, it was a huge table, a whole bunch of incredible people representing it in the government. And one of the things I was so impressed with, all of us were actually, was that this didn't feel like interacting with the government. It actually felt like interacting with entrepreneurs. We felt like VCs that were being pitched to. And one of the ways that they did this is they talked a lot about not only the approval rating of the president, which is around 92%, and there's 70%, of Congress as far as their party. So they have a super majority in Congress to get anything that they need to get done. But they focused on their COVID-19 response, which I thought was really interesting. At first, we're kind of like, why are they spending so much time on COVID? And then they explained that they built this incredible 3-story mass vaccination center. They built this incredible, like it was a smaller hospital, and they basically extended it from like, I think around 6 or 8 beds to, 30, 40 plus beds, plus all these different TV cameras and remote medicine. So they had us get on the bus and tour these places and to get a firsthand experience of what they've accomplished in a really, really short period of time. And they made it very clear to us, we are the team that implemented this response, and we are the team that's implementing the Bitcoin law. And so it was one of those examples where we were all just shocked to think, wow, this is the way government can act. They can actually move quickly and decisively, and they can provide value to their citizens in a very, very short amount of time. And they were counting down the days. They're like, the law says we have 90 days. We're on day 82. We're on day 81. And they were just counting it down. And so it was really exciting to see. And it got me to rethink what I consider government. I hadn't really considered that a group that's centralized in this way could provide value. And they were giving me an example of where they could. So I'm very, very optimistic. I think they're very, very serious about this. A couple of the delegation members are actually boots on the ground still there in El Salvador. Some of them have decided they're just going to stay there until September. So there's a lot of stuff going on where they're trying to help implement this with education, with wallet functionality, with whatever they need. And so we're very excited to be part of that conversation as well. And it's an amazing opportunity. I think the combination of the support of the president, the support of their Congress, the fact that 70% of the people there in El Salvador don't have any banking whatsoever. So they have this kind of opportunity to jump right into this new technology. It's just a perfect storm, I think. And I'm very excited about what it could mean. And some people are a little confused about the law, saying, oh, no, I don't really like it because it kind of forces people to use Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's this free thing that no one should be forced to use. And it's the way it's worded is, you don't have to use it as a citizen. You just have to accept it as a business or a government agency. And so from that perspective, they are kind of mandating 1/2 of the transaction. But the beautiful thing there as well is you don't have to hold it. In the law, it's written if you don't want to deal with the volatility, you could swap right out to USD. So I think what they're doing is phenomenal. I think it's really exciting. I think it represents a historic moment in our industry. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of other countries. I'm hearing, a lot of people saying, hey, Brock, Pierce, when are you going to come to our country? When are you going to talk to us about this? So it's very, very exciting to see the world kind of realizing, you can't just keep printing trillions of dollars as the world reserve currency and not have it impact the economies of the world. So I think this is an important moment. I was really honored to be part of that first delegation, and I'm looking forward to many more to come.
Luke, just like you, I have a very optimistic take on where crypto is headed. People think people have this habit. By people, I mean media as well. They have this habit of looking at BTC values and quickly pointing out and saying, "Hey, you know what? Bitcoin's going to crash," or you know what, crypto, nobody likes crypto, or you know what, the regulations are going to erase crypto out of existence. But then I see El Salvador, I see Paraguay, I see Panama as well. They are also discussing BTC implementation. I see different world governments thinking about transitioning to CBDCs. And I can see how blockchain is very gradually making big impact. Like it's this hidden revolution. So we people in the industry are well aware of what's happening, but for most of the people out there, they still don't understand just how much blockchain is already beginning to impact them. So Luke, my next question to you is, the year is 2025 and FIO has got a huge user base. Let's put it this way. Majority of people who transact in crypto, they use a FIO address because it's just so easy to use. Now, let's say we're having this interview again in 2025. What will you tell me if I ask you what's next for FIO?
Hmm. That's a great question. And 2025 is like forever from now in the crypto blockchain space. So it's a little bit hard to imagine. It's kind of like saying, hey, here comes the internet in the early days. Like I said, I started building websites in 1996 and animated GIFs were exciting then, right?
Right.
And then we couldn't even imagine Netflix. We couldn't even imagine streaming a video call like we're doing now. And so I think in some ways it's almost impossible to imagine the incredible things that will be built on top of this protocol. But at the same time, we have a couple glimpses of that. So for example, NFTs are very exciting things, non-fungible tokens, this idea that you can tokenize anything in the world. It's starting with art, but it's going to extend to real estate and ownership of vehicles and anything you can imagine. But it's very, very complicated. It's very confusing to know, did I buy a real genuine NFT from the original artist, or did I get scammed? Someone copy their image, redeploy it on a different contract and pretend to be the original artist. So one of the things that we're developing as an enhancement to the protocol is signing of NFTs, NFT signatures through the FIO protocol. We're very, very excited about this. So I can, as an artist, sign my work with Luke @Stokes, cryptographically prove that I am the author of this piece of art. And at the same time, prove that the content of the art is what it should be by the time you get it as the end user. And so why that's important is a lot of people don't realize the image, for example, for an NFT is not actually stored on the blockchain. All that's stored is a reference to the image. It's a location. And ideally that should be on IPFS or some other type of, more immutable storage service, but sometimes it's not. And it can be very challenging for the end user to know, did I actually get the very thing that I paid for? And one of the ways that you can do that is with something called a hash. We can use a process to verify this exact image that you're buying is the exact image that the author intended. And I think that's really important. So NFT signatures is just one example. We've got ideas for secure routing of multi-signature transactions. We think multi-sig is going to be incredibly important in the future. It already is now, but just not enough people using it because it's a little complicated to set up. Also, account key recovery, the idea that you could have social key recovery just as simple as a FIO request. Hey, I lost my phone. I lost all my money. What do I do? And you could actually have portions of your seed phrase, for example, sent out to a bunch of your friends, and you could initiate a request to say, hey, I lost my account. Please call me on my phone and verify that this is actually me. And I'm hoping you'll give me back, a couple of those words that I sent you, 6 months ago, or whatever it might be. So I think being able to do account recovery is really important. I think there are a number of other things like requests for signature. When you're interacting with DeFi, a lot of people have to use MetaMask and some of these other more confusing interfaces, whereas we could have it as simple as a request functionality saying, hey, such and such an application would like you to sign this transaction, giving you all the details in human readable language, what that's about. So there's so many exciting improvements we can make in the entire crypto space. And the idea that FIO becoming ubiquitous, meaning everywhere, fully adopted by the world, meaning every major exchange, every major wallet, every crypto-enabled application. So that includes, gaming platforms and NFT platforms and all these other things. If they can all have a similar friendly user experience, I think that's going to be phenomenal. And it's one of the few opportunities for this industry to kind of work together. Oftentimes there's people in their own little silos. They're doing their own crypto tribal thing where it's like, it's my coin or nothing, or they're doing their own thing where it's like my exchange or my wallet and everything else is a competitor. Whereas this creates an opportunity where as an industry, we can start building standards to work together. Meaning, hey, a rising tide raises all ships. If we actually create a great experience for everyone, we're going to onboard many more millions of people. We're going to have more customers. We're going to have happier customers, fewer mistakes, fewer tech support frustration. So I'm very, very excited about that. And I like imagining that world. What would it look like to have this protocol be adopted everywhere? Because then we have a mechanism, a consortia. We call it the decentralized autonomous consortia, the FIO protocol, where people can work together. We can have these competitors talking to each other about their industry and saying, hey, how are we going to deal with the travel rule? Should we do that with a FIO request? How are we going to deal with these regulation concerns? And just getting people to work together and realize that the kind of central thing that they're trying to become better than would be the central banks and the kind of the systems that we all kind of rebelled against a little bit in order to get into blockchain and crypto. And you mentioned CBDCs is another interesting example where governments of the world and central banks are working on central bank digital currencies. And my concern there is that they're going to be easy, they're going to be fast, they're going to be centralized, and people are going to gravitate towards them because they like to just do what's easy. But it's also a huge risk for our industry that if we don't create an experience that's at least as easy as these centralized experiences, if not better, then we're going to lose an opportunity. People are going to say, well, okay, using crypto is hard, it's confusing. Well, I'll just go ahead and use my banking app already has this other token thing and it's all digital currency, right? It's all the same thing. And they're just going to gravitate towards it. And they're not going to understand kind of the self-sovereign principles that we believe in so much and why it's so important to control your keys and control your coins. And so I think it's a pivotal moment for the industry to recognize, like, educating people on why blockchain even matters. What's the why? Why is it important to be your own bank, own your own store of value? What does it look like in different countries where that story of financial value breaks down and they don't have that control to have their own destiny defined by their own actions? So I think it's an important moment for crypto, and I'm really excited where FIO's positioned to help with that.
Right. Well, thank you, Luke, for that very insightful answer. The last question of this interview is also personally the most important question, I feel, is now that we've discussed, we're talking about mainstream adoption of crypto, we're talking about people gravitating towards digital currencies. Luke, if somewhere to ask you the benefits of using crypto payments over any other banking system interface, what would you tell them? A couple of salient features, maybe a couple of points, a small breakthrough which a non-crypto person can understand and appreciate. How would you tell it to them?
One of the things that I personally focus on, and this may be not what most people think about, but I personally, the way I got into crypto is also studying monetary theory, studying the way the world works. And I think that this is important. It's a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, but I do think it's important, at least it was for me, to really understand the value of cryptocurrency. So most people spend a full day away from their family, working a job. Maybe it's not even a job they love. And they get these little pieces of paper. They get these little digits in their bank account. They get ones and zeros. They get money, but they never stop to think, what is money? What actually is it? How come these pieces of paper with these political people on it actually has value? How come I can go and spend this for milk and bread? Like, I don't get it, right? And asking that question, what is money? I think it's one of the most important, valuable things that cryptocurrency does, because it reminds us that money is basically shared storytelling. It's a group of people that have a consensus about value. They have a belief system that together works. And the challenge I see is when you're adding trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to that ecosystem, you're basically committing theft. It's inflation is a form of theft. They're stealing the purchasing power from yourself and your children, your children's children. And they're creating all this debt. If you look at a Federal Reserve note, a US dollar, it's literally a certificate of debt. It says, hey, this represents a debt. And so I think it's important for me to recognize that even if yes, there's a lot of volatility in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but even if you look at the yearly lows of Bitcoin, it's the most incredible investment you could be involved in. And a lot of people don't think about it this way, but if you're not in cryptocurrency, your default investment is basically connected to the US dollar in some way because it is the world reserve currency. And if you look at the last 100 years of the US dollar purchasing power, it's a very terrible investment, but it's everyone's default investment. And so I like to I know it's a little bit intellectual, it's a little bit deep, it takes a little while for people to wrap their head around it. But once they do, they're committed, they completely get it. And it's this idea that self-sovereign control of your own value, your own wealth, the idea that you're not going to be deflated or inflated away as far as your purchasing power, because you get to participate in the projects voluntarily that you like. You get to see what the governance is. You get to see what the inflation rate is, if there is any, and you get to directly participate. And I feel like that gives people a sense of control and autonomy and value that is so important that it changes the way they view the world. They actually start thinking about, hey, I can save, I can invest, I can do whatever I want. I can have full autonomy to learn from my own mistakes. And right. I just feel like that is really, really important. So obviously there's that. There's the decentralized nature of it, meaning there's no middleman who can prevent you from transacting. There are certain activists, for example, that want to support freedom and they can't because they can't literally get funding to do so. I think that's really important. There's censorship resistance, meaning it's a active free speech to be able to transfer and put in a memo in the Bitcoin blockchain, for example, and that can't be stopped. So there's no controllers telling you how you can conversate and have information exchange. So I think those features are really important. And then of course, just the ability to transact anywhere in the world with a very, hopefully low fees. I know Bitcoin and Ethereum fees have been a little bit high lately. And again, I think we just have to continue innovating as an industry, whether that's layer 2 solutions or eventually other protocols, maybe that might be also kind of develop their own shared storytelling as to what value could be. So those are just some examples. I could probably go on and on about my excitement with crypto and blockchain, but ultimately, if I had to summarize, it's just, having your own store of value, understanding what money actually is and why crypto is a better default investment. And then, what that does to your thinking process when you start to realize, wait, if we don't need really governments, and in some case, violent governments defining what money is, what else do we not need them for? What other things can we decentralize? Maybe we can do governance, for example. Maybe we can do forms of even justice or law, not just a monopoly on currency creation, but they have a monopoly on many other services that people want. And as we start thinking about what does it mean to have this ledger of global nonviolent consensus that is a blockchain, what does it mean to start decentralizing some of the services that governments usually offer us? So I'm very, very excited about the potential and what it could mean.
Thank you, Luke, for joining our show today. This was a really fun session. Thank you for coming in, giving your valuable commentaries. I especially loved your answer on money. I personally feel that it's very important to understand and appreciate the concept. Again, a bit too technical, a bit little towards philosophical. Maybe not everybody gets the time to appreciate it, but it's nevertheless very important to understand where the movement of blockchain and crypto comes from. Thank you, Luke, for joining our show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.